Imagine boarding a ship bound for the sun, Australia, paying only £10 for the passage of a lifetime. You're told of endless beaches, hearty wages, a vast empty land begging for builders. Promise and dreams waft in the tropical breeze. But behind that idyllic promise lurked a hidden agenda. In the turmoil of 1945, a desperate wartime generation came up with the slogan, "Populate or perish." Australia had been battered by war. Singapore had fallen, Darwin had been bombed, and leaders feared the empty continent was too lightly defended. To those in power, more bodies meant more safety. So Prime Minister Chifley's new Immigration Minister Arthur Calwell opened the door. The door to Australia will always be open to the people from the various dominions, United States and European continental countries, he declared. Britain's doorstep swung wide. Behind the bright posters and recruitment offices, a deeper plan pulsed. Australia clung to its White Australia policy, an openly racist labor to keep the population white and British. Decades of strict quotas and a cunning dictation test had shrunk the Asian population to near invisibility. Asians and other non-white people found the Australian welcome almost impossible. In 1947, only 2.7% of Australia's population was born outside the British Isles. Calwell's post-war immigration drive still reflected this bias. Government planners made no secret of preferring Britons. They believed English-speaking migrants could step into the Australian lifestyle seamlessly. Australia hopes that for every 4 migrant, there will be 10 people from the United Kingdom, Calwell proclaimed in 1946. In fact, the 10 Pound Pom scheme was staggering in scale. Between 1947 and 1981, over 1 million Britons packed their lives into the holds of ships bound for Australia. Families like the one above left Liverpool with nothing but suitcases and bright hopes. Adults paid the symbolic £10 fare. Children traveled free, a snippet of the true cost. Once the famous SS Georgic slipped into Australian waters, each migrant became a brick in the city under construction. This influx was part of a larger gamble. Australia needed workers to build roads, railways, factories, and farms. The plan was simple and stark. Fill Australia with people who looked like us, and the nation's future would be secure. And so, in bulletin boards and post-war magazines, the government painted a picture of paradise. Posters screamed of endless sunshine and boundless opportunity. 13 embedded image. One 1949 government poster cheerfully proclaimed Australia, land of tomorrow, showcasing happy farmers, grazing sheep and sunlit rolling fields. This cartoon vision, pastel skies, tractors humming along neat lanes, was plastered in reception halls and dining rooms, even in migrant camps overseas. British workers starving for hope saw these vibrant images and felt compelled to sign on. The message was clear: Australia was eager to take them in. When hopeful palms arrived, however, the fairy tale chillily unraveled. They disembarked into crowded camps of corrugated iron and hastily built huts. Promised jobs and housing were often delayed or non-existent. Instead of a porch and a good job, many found themselves in basic migrant hostels, former army huts called Nissan barracks, eating thin soup in communal kitchens. The promised life twice as good could feel distant and hollow. Work was not automatic, and bureaucrats still held sway. Newcomers surrendered their British passports for 2 years, bound to the land. Any plan to abandon this new world meant writing a big check, the full £120 fare back home. For most, returning was unthinkable. Days and weeks dragged on those long voyages and early months under the Australian sun. Many migrants were driven by vivid dreams and simple needs. Back in Britain, they had known rationing, crumbling cities, and scarred memories of war. Poverty, the effects of war, and the breakdown of family relationships in England were all reasons to escape, a historian writes. They chased sunshine, better wages, and the possibility of adventure. Mothers clutched children and kissed relatives goodbye, hearts racing with excitement and terror. Yet for some, the disorientation was sharp. One newly arrived Englishwoman described Tasmania's wild mountains as threatening. The land had no history that I could read. In that foreign bush, home felt a million miles away. The early days were mysterious and intense, as if they had stepped into another world. The children of Britain were not spared this scheme. In hidden bedrooms and orphanages, thousands of British kids, sometimes as young as 5, were quietly sent to Australia in search of a better life, as claimed, and some say, to populate the empire with good white stock. Between 1947 and the late 1950s, roughly 3,300 British children landed on Australian shores alone. They came with no family, often no paperwork or passports, only distant promises that families in the sunshine might care for them. In reality, many were funneled into church-run homes or farms where rules were strict and punishment harsh. The grim truth emerged only decades later. These youngsters often endured severe mistreatment and bereft of affection. Finally, after stories of broken lives became public, an Australian Prime Minister publicly apologized in 2009 for this chapter of betrayal. Back on the mainland, politicians soon realized that even a million Poms couldn't keep Australia white forever. By 1953 saw more Greeks and Italians arriving than Brits, setting off a panic in Parliament. In 1949, they allowed non-British Europeans to come, if only beautiful Balts who fit the ideal physique. Through the 1950s and 60s, citizenship laws loosened, Asians were gradually admitted, national origins quotas scrapped. The process was slow and grudging, but inevitable. By the late 1960s, the old white Australia dream was crumbling. New leaders like Prime Minister Harold Holt and then Gough Whitlam signaled that race no longer defined the nation's character. The Migration Act of 1973 under Whitlam finally outlawed racial discrimination in immigration, ending the policy officially. It was an admission that Australia could not, and perhaps should not, be bottled as one color forever. The sequel of post-war migration was truly global and multicultural. Waves of Greek, Italian, Vietnamese, Lebanese, and many more followed the Poms, each finding its niche in a now multifaceted society. By 1975, Australians of British Isles ancestry still formed a significant portion of the population, but others, including Indigenous peoples, had a louder voice in the national story than ever before. The descendants of those 10-pound adventurers live in a country far richer in culture than the old guards imagined. Today's Australia has people from every corner of the globe, and yet many still proudly remember the generations who came on that cheap ticket. This story is unsettling and powerful. It shows how fear and ideology shaped real lives, and how even grand plans can backfire. Are we better for this secret history? Did the populate or perish gamble pay off? And how does knowing this change the way we see our own nation? If you found this tale as mesmerizing and thought-provoking as we did, share it with others. Keep questioning the past, and subscribe for more hidden histories revealed.